Chapter 1 An Indelible Lesson in Self-Defense. Birchkow, Bosnia, February 1991. Keenan Trebinchevich, I heard myself called over the microphone. Beneath the tall windows of the Partisan Sports Hall, my second home, I marched to the middle of the lacquered wooden floor, my white kimono fastened at the waist with a blue sash. My bare feet were freezing, but I focused on my kicking. If I nailed this, at 10 years old, I'd be the youngest brown belt in my division. It was the biggest challenge of my life. One little slip could embarrass Coach Pirro, the brilliant black belt I'd looked up to for the last 6 years. I wanted to make him proud. I was nervous yet pumped, as though a swarm of butterflies were flying down my throat as I tackled the choreographed pattern of movements called katas, carrying out my slow, careful dance of kicks and punches. When I was finished, Coach Perro flashed his 2 thumbs up, then winked at me. "Yes," my father nodded, thrusting his fist in the air. We Balkanites took athletics very seriously. I knew my performance was a reflection on my dad, who volunteered as president of our karate club. He owned a nearby fitness center in Birchkow, training professional athletes. As a little kid, I sat beside him on the players' bench for our volleyball teams. Matches. I'd hold the cans of cold spray he used to numb a player's pulled muscle. When the games were over, we'd hang in the locker room. I hated when the 6'10" giants put me on their shoulders. My head would get dizzy and I was sure I'd fall off. After my test, I waited impatiently for the judges for our teams. Lokomotiva, our team, Lokomotiva, locomotive in English, filled out diplomas for those moving up the ranks and announced the winners. My friends Velibor and Dalibor were declared blue belts. When my name was called, all my teammates rushed to hug and high-five me. I ran over to my 17-year-old brother and then to Dad, sliding on my knees. Pirro was grinning, squatting, his arms wide open. As I leapt into his embrace, he lifted me high over his head, triumphant. I wasn't scared this time. "Super job, Kino baby," Pirro said, draping my new brown belt around my neck. Then he tossed me over his shoulder, holding me by my feet, carrying me like a backpack. I laughed, happier than I'd ever been. Perro loved me most. I was special. Then he put me down so we could observe our tradition, taking off my blue belt and officially handing it to Velibor. "Ivo Chipoplavi Pojas," I said. "Here is the blue belt you earned." "Vala," he thanked me, slapping my palm. I couldn't wait to tell Mom the awesome news. In the locker room, I quick changed back into myself, with my new belt around my neck, displayed over my street clothes. Returning to our apartment complex, I spotted my neighbor Igor on his souped-up neon blue BMX bicycle and ran ahead to greet him. "I just won the brown belt," I boasted. Igor had reddish hair and freckles and was taller than me, skinny like a tree branch. He was the bravest of our group, scaling the tops of cherry trees, popping wheelies on his bicycle, or riding downhill with his eyes closed and his hands behind his back just to show off. I hoped to impress him. "Cool, Kenji," he said. "Check out my new bike." "Where did you get it?" I knew he'd stolen it. He was wearing his old beat-up sneakers and dirty gray sweatshirt my mom would have never let me wear out of the house. "Fell off a truck," he joked laughingly. "Want to ride with me in Huso?" "Are you coming, Keenan?" Dad asked as he caught up to us on the sidewalk. "Hey, Mr. Kika." Dad nodded hello, but he never liked it when I hung out with Igor, whom he called a troublemaking punk. Igor's dad was a mean, sickly menace. He'd spent his last days in a wheelchair, his leg amputated below the knee because of diabetes. He would station himself outside here by the steps, chain smoke, drink rakiha, and swear at everyone walking by. He'd throw his shoe and spit at Igor if he didn't steal him cigarettes from the store, bellowing, "How dare you come home empty-handed, you worthless moron!" After his father died last year, Igor's mom let her son run rampant, according to my parents. But you could see Igor's other side in the way he treated dogs. He used to feed a stray black mutt he named Bobby bowls of milk and bones from his mom's chicken soup. When he found Bobby lying dead in the street, shot in the left eye, he arranged a funeral and cried for days. I felt so bad for Igor, who had it rough. Though at 53, Dad was one of the oldest fathers, I knew he was the best one, showing me off to his sports buddies and giving me money to treat my friends to ice cream whenever I asked. Just then, my pal Huso came through the entrance, his Harley bicycle on his shoulder. "Hello, Keenum, did you pass?" I showed off the treasured brown fabric on my neck. "Congratulations, great job," said Huso. Out of the boys in the building, he was the neatest and tallest and had the biggest shoulders. He had a dark blonde crew cut and wore a blue shirt tucked into his jeans and clean white sneakers. He was fluent in English and spoke Bosnian formally since his father was a professor. "Would you like to come with us?" "Yeah, let's do it." I was ready to get a soccer game going. I wanted Huso on my side. He was 2 grades higher than me and had a lethal shot. But Dad cut me off. "Your mom made you food. You have to go upstairs." "Sorry, I can't." I shrugged to the guys. "Let's go," Dad prodded. "Tell your father I said hi," he said to Huso. I rushed up 3 floors 2 steps at a time, speeding so I was out of breath when I reached the top. The scent of roasted peppers filled the hallway as I unlaced my Converse high tops in a hurry. Mom, check it out!" I yelled, running in. I won! She was sitting in the front of the dining room, overlooking the balcony, calmly pressing clothes with her new electric iron from Germany. She stepped on the pedal of her silver machine, humming to Dino Merlin's "Something Nice Needs to Happen" on the tape player. She'd had a wooden case built for the album collection my father had amassed during his jazz band days. He liked the liquid smooth trumpet of an American musician named Louis Armstrong best. I held up my new belt. She hugged me, kissing the top of my head. "Now go wash your dirty hands before we eat," she said. "I already washed up in the locker room," I argued. My mother, a pretty redhead neatnik, was 37, 16 years younger than my father, who, Uncle Ahmet said, robbed her cradle. She worked with Huso's mom at Velma, a clothing company. When she came home, her meticulous apartment was her sanctuary. The dining room table was for eating only, so my G.I. Joes and miniature car collection were banned to the bedroom Eldon and I shared. Shoes were ordered off and left outside the front door. When my ski pants were soaked from sledding, they came off at the door too, so I wouldn't get her new rug wet. "Wash again, I don't want your fingerprints on my furniture," she scolded. "I'll have to buy you colored socks. I'm tired of bleaching your white ones. Do you swim in the mud?" When the phone rang, it was my best friend, Yasenko, asking if I wanted to test our new slingshots on pigeons outside. "Yasenko and I are going to pick cherries," I told Mom. "It's February. No cherries, you liar," she said. "Now wash up and eat your lunch. We're going to see Grandma Imena and Auntie Besira today." But who wanted old relatives when I could be testing slingshots with Yasenko or getting a pickup soccer game with Huso? I'd earned the scabs and scrapes all over my arms and legs by playing outside, the best athlete and the first pick of all the neighborhood boys. "Aunt Basira and her kids will be there," Mom said. "She has a present for you." "She gets gross lipstick all over me when she kisses," I lamented. As we ate, I gave Mom the play-by-play of my karate award. She never liked sports, but she nodded, pretending to understand. Eldon reached for the carton of milk. Don't spill it, you'll stain my new rug, she warned my big brother, a notorious Butterfingers. She told everyone how special the dumb rug was. So what's the point if you can't walk on it? I asked. Just keep your sweaty feet off my carpet, you hellion, she answered, smiling. After lunch, she sat on her heels on the floor, framing my new karate diploma. Then the four of us walked across town to Grandma Imena's. I was hyper to show off my brand new belt. Remember to keep your hands off the shelf so you don't break their aquarium, Mom warned. No running like a maniac or playing tag in the house, and don't rattle the cage to scare birds like you did last time. Eldon won our race up the steep hill to my mom's childhood house. Inside, Grandma hugged me. Trapped! Aunt Basira overkissed. Unable to escape her lips, my cheeks were red like a clown's. His coach Pirro gave him that special belt, Mom announced. I passed the brown fabric around for all to see. Very impressive, my honey bun, Grandma said. Look what I made you, Aunt Basira served apple strudel warm from the oven, my favorite. Want something to drink? Can I have more milk? Just don't spill it, Grandma warned. When you come over, I have a yellow parakeet for you, Aunt Basira promised. You can take all of them, said my cousin Mirza. He and his sister Amila hated their mom's cutlery of turtles, birds, and fish, which she spoke to like her own children. Last time, Mirza got screamed at for racing her turtles on the carpet. Adisa, this is for you. Basira handed Mom a denim skirt and a silky beige nightgown. Then she gave me 100 dinars, the equivalent of $50, for climbing the karate ranks. I was totally psyched, thinking of all the things I would buy. Your Aunt Basira's too nice, Mom said, hugging her sister. If you compliment her shirt, she'll take it off and give it to you. Mom was younger, the feisty one. They looked alike, though Basira had longer hair, dark hair, and blue eyes. Mom was worried about her divorce. I never knew anybody who was divorcing before. I hoped I could continue playing with Uncle Nidio, and that he'd still be allowed to buy me miniature cars. I wound up spending Basira's cash gift on a customized soccer jersey. My teammates and I had numbers stenciled on our t-shirts to wear at our annual July karate camp on the Croatian coast. But that spring, Dad told us the 1991 summer season was called off. Yugoslav politics was his excuse. Bad timing. The cancellation seemed so unfair. I wouldn't get to train for my black belt, or snorkel, or watch the funny American movie Meatballs outdoors again. What's going on? Remember the mass riot at Maksimir Stadium on TV last year? Eldon said. Scenes of rampaging fans popped into my mind. The fight between Dinamo Zagreb's soccer team from Croatia and Serbia's Red Star Belgrade was the most insane sports brawl we'd ever seen. Torn-off seats flew like frisbees, and toilets ripped from the floor were thrown as missiles. The Serbs, led by an ex-con named Arkan, saying, Zagreb is Serbian. The police called in reinforcements and used tear gas and water cannons to disperse the violence. Men were wounded by the police force. A Croatian team captain came to a fan's defense by karate kicking a police officer, knocking him down. The Croat was suspended from the soccer league for 6 months and had criminal charges filed against him. Afterward, Dad said, the Yugoslavian police have become the Serb police. Another soccer fight? I questioned my brother now. How did I miss it? You know how those tanks came on television last week? He said. The Serbs were attacking Croatia and Slovenia. Why? I asked Eldon, who never talked down to me just because I was younger. Because after Milicevic rigged the election, the Croatians had enough and voted for sovereignty, he explained, to get away from Milocevic's obsession with creating an all-Serbian country. So they're both separate countries now? He nodded. I remembered how, in second grade, I'd been called up in front of the class to point out on the map and name the 6 different republics that made up my nation of Yugoslavia: Serbia, Bosnia-Herzegovina, Croatia, Slovenia, Macedonia, and Montenegro, along with the separate Serbian provinces Kosovo and Vojvodina. When Dad and I watched Sands of Iwo Jima, he told me Hawaii was one of America's 50 states, the way Bosnia was one of Yugoslavia's 6 republics. Each state in the U.S. spoke English, he said, just as everyone in our republics used the same South Slavic language, though with different accents and dialects. I knew that Serbia was the biggest, and that Dad and Eldon didn't like their leader, Milosevic, calling him that power-hungry ape. But why would he want to fight everyone? I didn't get it. Historically, the Serbs see themselves as warriors, Eldon said. They even celebrate wars they lost. They get trashed every June to commemorate the infamous Battle of Kosovo when the Turkish army wiped them out. It was in the 14th century, but they never got over it. They still think they're victims. He pulled out his high school textbook to reveal several paintings of scenes that showed the Turks' Ottoman Empire slaughtered the Serbs. In the Kosovo Maiden, a beautiful lady gave water to a handsome Serb soldier wounded by the Turks at the 1389 Battle of Kosovo. Migration of the Serbs depicted a Serbian patriarch leading a flock of thousands into exile after they were massacred by the Turkish army again in 1689. My brother explained that the Turkish occupation of our land started in 1463 when Turks brought Serbians to Bosnia as servants, along with Islam. Bosniaks had their own church, but the Pope accused them of heresy, Eldon said. Those who refused to convert to Catholicism and instead embraced Islam, the main religion of the Turkish people. The history of the Serbs and the description of the paintings of the migration of Serbs were taken from the Serbs' History of Destruction of Yugoslavia by Tim Judah. But the Serbs can't still be pissed off and blaming us for that, I told him. They wouldn't hold a grudge against us for 500 years. Why not? He asked. Could that be what Pierrot is mad at all of a sudden? Last time we saw him at Partisan, he acted strange and brushed me off. He hadn't shaved or combed his curly blonde hair. He looked tired and scruffy. One afternoon, a brown-haired girl in a tight green dress came by, so our karate practice was rushed. He flirted with her while we finished our group exercises. When Dad came to watch the end of our session, he found us unsupervised, doing somersaults on the soft mats. The practice ended at 2, I reported. Pierrot left with the girl in a green dress. How can he teach you discipline if he leaves early with horse? Dad growled. At our next out-of-town martial arts event, Pierrot was supposed to walk in front of the judges, but we couldn't find him. Goddamn flake, Dad muttered, pacing the locker room. When our names were called, Pierrot was still missing. We were embarrassed. My father's face was red and sweating. Pierrot finally showed up, and he and Dad went into a corner. I could see Dad gesturing forcefully with his hands. Pierrot's own hands were on his hips, his eyes to the ground. Later, Dad told me Pierrot was hungover and had been asleep beneath the arena's bleachers, where a janitor had found him. What's wrong with Pierrot? I asked, worried. The next morning, at the team breakfast, another coach whispered in Dad's ear that he'd seen Pierrot sleeping between the mats, using Oslobođenje, the Freedom newspaper, as his blanket. Why was Pierrot partying so hard and missing practices? I needed him to show me more katas and help me spar, to win more tournaments and give me hugs and high fives. But something weird was happening to him. Dad said Pierrot was mad when his recent demand for a raise was denied. In retaliation, he quit He quit coaching Lokomotiva. In a bold rebellion, he launched his own martial arts team at Partizan, pulling some of my teammates to his side and charging them separately. We were offended, but my dad couldn't fire Piero. Partisan Sports Hall, like the local library, was owned by the town. Dad made a good living running Fitness Keka, his own training center, a few miles away. He only volunteered with our karate team to spend time with me and Eldon. My father hated confrontation, so instead of forcing a face-off, he coerced our old former coach out of retirement, rehired him, and avoided Pirro. What happened to me, what bothered me the most, was that Pirro didn't even try to take me with him. He left me with the beginners. Without his encouragement, I started doubting myself. If I was really good, Pirro would have picked me for his new team. I thought I was his best. I missed him. Dieci Pirro, I said next time I saw him as his team's practice finished up. It was the equivalent of what's up. He didn't answer. He didn't even look at me. I was devastated. Since first grade, Pirro had been my idol. His whole family lived in Birchko, close by us. I knew he was 26, that he worked as an electrician by day and did karate nights and weekends. He hung out with hip guys who wore leather jackets and aviator shades, like Tom Cruise in Top Gun. Pretty girls would stop by the gym just to flirt with him. All my teammates and their parents looked at him with respect. In bed that night, I couldn't sleep. I didn't know why Pirro had abandoned me. I tried to think what I did wrong. Our team weakened. For the next 6 months, the two karate squads shared the locker room at Partizan Sports Hall, but Pirro never spoke to me again. Zoka, a Serbia brown belt, became his new sidekick. He was 2 years older than I was. At 6'2", Zoka towered over me. I must have been too small for Pirro, too weak. Pirro's washed up, a teammate sneered as we changed out of our kimonos. Oh yeah? Is that why he's kicking ass in Croatia on the weekends? Said Zoka. Croatia? I wondered if Pirro was teaching weekend karate there on his own. That's what they get for pushing to be independent, Zoka chided. Eldon had mentioned the Croatians were trying to get away from the Serbians, but I didn't know they were still fighting about it. Coming home on a cool October night, I listened to the low voices of Mom and Yasenka's mother on the balcony. No laughter, no music in the background. Bright red flashes lit up the northern Croatian plains. Suddenly the sky roared. Bombs in Vukovar, Mom told me, her eyes squinting with worry. I told myself that the Croatian city was far away from us, at least an hour and a half drive, and pretended not to be scared. As I ate my breakfast of Nutella crepes the next day, the morning news anchor announced that as a reaction to Croatia's declaration of independence from Yugoslavia, the Serb-dominated army was bombing the Croatians. Confused, I scanned Hollywood war movies in my mind. American troops battled the Third Reich, Russians, and Japanese. Nobody ever attacked their own countrymen. I wondered if the current Croatia-Serbia conflict was like Gone with the Wind. Mom said that America's Civil War was between two sides from the same country fighting racism against people of color. But the only blacks I'd ever seen were on the screen. All the people here were white. In college, my father was an extra in the 1962 Yugoslav film Kozara. He played a German getting beat up by a Yugoslav peasant. The actor was an old Serb mountain villager, Dad said, who'd hit him too hard with his cane. Calm down, it's only a movie, Dad had yelled. He later told me the exterminators who shot stray dogs at 5 a.m. were Serb villagers who'd been bussed in. So I thought village people who came from the high hills resented city dwellers like us because we had nicer homes and cushier jobs. Our other differences had gone past me. At lunch, Eldon pointed to an article in the Freedom paper, Ozlobudnye, a trustworthy liberal source, he said, published in Sarajevo. Their chart analyzed the election breakdown by region and faith. It showed that Serbia was mostly Orthodox Christians and Croatia Roman Catholics. Bosnia, where we lived, was the most religiously mixed. 32% Serbian Christian Serbs, 17% Croats who practiced Roman Catholicism, and 45% Muslims like us. Growing up, the main difference I noticed is that we had Ramadan and no Santa Claus. Plus, Catholic kids I knew got Christmas gifts in December, but Serbs had to wait till January. Geographically, Croatia seemed the most beautiful part of our country, filled with lakes, caves, and exotic natural beauty along the coast. A TV newscaster mentioned weekend warriors, Bosnian Serbs who were going to Croatia, where they were given a uniform and a gun to kill Croats from Friday to Sunday nights. After the bombing and deaths were reported, I understood why my Croatian summer camp was canceled. I figured out that Peru must have been fighting part-time in the war there. No wonder he was acting so weird, drunk, and tired at karate practice during the week. My coach was falling apart. My country was falling apart. At dinner, my family watched the TV news in English. I tried to follow their expressions. Greater Serbia, nationalism, ethnic cleansing. What's ethnic cleansing? I asked my father. It means every 50 years a new political turns us against each other, he said. Croatians were mad at the Serbians, but who was against us, and why? Dad explained that it was a land grab, that Serbia wanted to expand their territory and rule a bigger country filled with only Orthodox Christians like them. So Milosevic ordered his troops to get rid of Muslims and Catholics in the other republics. My brother said this was the way Hitler had purged Germany of Jews in the World War II, envisioning a pure race. But how can the Serbians get away with it? I was outraged. They have the most cops, generals, and ammunition factories, Eldon said. According to my brother, politicians and military bigwigs were already centered in Belgrade, the capital of Serbia. Since the end of World War II, they'd controlled the school curriculums and history books and the museums filled with Serbian arts and Serbian heroes and the media. The biggest TV station in Yugoslavia was based there. After Tito died in 1980, Milosevic began mobilizing, shoring up more power. When he touted his greater Serbian Orthodox Christian vision to the Yugoslavian People's Army, Catholic and Muslim soldiers were no longer wanted to serve. He led them to quit, making sure Serbs controlled the army bases, supplies, and weapons. Even though I was only 13, this sounded disastrous, like that demented soccer feud was spreading to real life. As I was coming home from school, late one October one day, Velibor and Dalibor were cheering in delight. Long live Serbia! Arkan is our hero! Arkan was the crook who'd led the Red Star Belgrade soccer fan riot. Eldon said he was a murderer who'd escaped from jail and was wanted by Interpol, muttering that he was a Serbian mafioso. Those stupid Croats are being slaughtered, Velibor roared, saluting a passing car that waved a Serbian flag. Don't worry, Arkan will come here too, Dalibor said, turning to me menacingly. That week, Igor put Huso and me on the same side as our Croat neighbor, insisting, only Serbs on our team. Over the weekend, they were playing tag without me. That fall, vans were passing through town every day, covered with enlarged pictures of Milosevic's face, blasting turbo folk music. Swarms of radical Serbs from the villages were bussed in, rallying support for the upcoming primary elections for our new party leaders. This politicking was more intense than any I'd ever seen. Billboards and posters sprouted up everywhere. On street corners, men shouted speeches from megaphones and argued in parks, cafes, and public squares. Serbs waved three-finger salutes when their rally cars sped by, Croats and Bosniaks held up 2 fingers for victory. Eldon said everyone had to pick sides. I didn't totally get what our 3 main political factions stood for yet, but I noted that the Bosniaks' color was green and the Croats' bloc was red-checkered. Milosevic's Serb party, the most nationalistic and dangerous for us, showed a blue stripe. It was on an emblem with the Serbian cross and 4 S's in their Cyrillic script. "What do those letters mean?" I asked my brother. "Only unity saves the Serbs," he told me. My parents liked our Muslim majority group, called the SDA Party of Democratic Action, who Dad wanted to vote for. But Mom said, "Rough times are coming. Look what happened in Croatia. Let's not be aligned to any side now." To be safe, they agreed not to vote. It didn't matter. Overnight, we were all divided by background anyway: Orthodox Serb, Catholic Croat, or Bosnian Muslim. Igor and his boys, all with Serb backgrounds, stopped talking to me and stared as I walked by. They snickered and called me Bosniak behind my back. The teammates picked me last, though we still played soccer together every day after school. I felt ostracized, left out, ignored. One chilly November recess, while we were eating salty cevape outside, Igor and I looked over the fence. Soldiers from the Yugoslavian People's Army military base, right next to our school, were cleaning their rifles. I was intrigued to see the weapons up close. "The other day, while I was stealing my bike, I saw them taking equipment out of the warehouse," Igor told me. "What's in there?" I asked. "They've got uniforms, gas masks, helmets, and duffel bags. I want some," Igor said, his bugged-out blue eyes hungry for looting. "I figured out a way in. We should check it out tonight. Meet me outside the building at 9 and bring plastic bags." Robbery was a serious crime, but I felt flattered he still wanted me in his gang. Maybe my pals had stopped listening to the stupid slurs their parents were spreading. I was so glad they liked me again. That night, Igor, Dalibor, and 2 other guys from our school were waiting for me, holding shopping bags to cart away our booty. Igor led the 5-minute walk to the edge of the school grounds. My heart was pumping fast as we sneaked up a hole in the fence. One at a time, we each squeezed through, slithering sideways to fit. Igor pointed out at the young recruits with guns patrolling the base. We crouched on our hands and knees before a window in the warehouse and then lifted each other inside. It was too dark, so Igor turned on the lights. The whole place was overstuffed with military equipment and mounts taller than we were. You couldn't even see the floor. I wanted to wear a soldier's uniform like my father's. The crisp new merchandise smelled raw and woodsy. "Grab what you can," Igor commanded. I quickly took bandages, a canteen, a portable shovel for digging trenches, and a green flashlight. I made sure to collect 4 gas masks for my family in case, as I had overheard Eldon and my parents' friends predicting the war in Croatia spread over the border to us. Dalibor and Dalibor grabbed shovels, combat sweaters, socks, holsters. Igor grabbed a green helmet, camouflage pants, a shovel, and some shirts. We all found backpacks and stuffed our stolen goods inside. We took turns as lookout. They were treating me as their equal. I was one of the guys, like old times. Nobody saw any guns or ammunition, or we would have swiped that too. "Hide!" Dalibor sounded a warning. "A soldier is coming!" We hid under piles of blankets. I was so scared, I thought I was going to pee my pants. The soldier looked through the window, but didn't see us. "Let's get out of here!" I was shaking, freaking out that if we got caught, my mom would kill me. I didn't know who I feared more, the armed militia or my mother. "Let's come back and get more tomorrow," Igor said. Unlike me, he wasn't the least fazed. He'd been looting his whole life. As we ran to the park, The weight of the stuffed pack was heavy on my back. We used our new shovels to dig ditches where we stashed everything. It was raining, so the ground was softer. When I came home at 10:30 p.m., I washed up and went straight to bed, pretending I'd just been out playing soccer and tag with the guys. The next day at school, during our math lesson, the principal came in and took Igor and me out of class into his office. Inside, there were two military policemen waiting. "Where were you last night, Keenan?" the tall one asked me. "We were playing hide and seek." Igor took the lead, lying with ease. The principal walked out and returned with Alex, our short classmate who had braces on his buck teeth. "I overheard them talking about breaking into the base last night," Alex said boldly. I knew my dad used to be ski buddies with Alex's father, a doctor who was now president of the Serb Democratic Party in town. Dad said he'd become a Milosevic fanatic who'd shown off his Serbian accent any chance he got. "When this is over, I'm going to kick your ass," Igor hissed at the tattletale, then spat at him. The principal pulled Igor by his ears and slammed him into the chair. "You boys have 10 minutes to bring me everything back," the soldier ordered. I was trembling. If my parents found out, they would ground me for life. I wouldn't be able to practice karate again. I'd never been in this much trouble before. Running to get the stuff to return, Igor followed me. "They don't know what we stole," he said in my ear. "Just give a few things back." He had a point, and if I returned everything and Igor didn't, they might know he'd kept more of the loot. I didn't want him to see me as a wimp or goody two-shoes. Then, he'd never include me in another feat of bravery again. So I retrieved the shovel, flashlight, and backpack, and left the bandages and gas masks behind. This way, if somebody threw a bomb like bank robbers on TV did, my family wouldn't breathe in the toxins and black smoke. We were then escorted to a military jeep by two uniformed men with armbands. The officer told us to get in back. Rows of my classmates' eyes gaped at us from the windows. I was shaking, scared to my bones. "We are so screwed," I told Igor. Sure, they were taking us to jail. We were separated, placed in two different rooms. The man in charge of the base came to interrogate me. He was really tall, with a goofy mustache that draped around his chin. I realized him as Milosav, a Serb friend of my father's. They had served together in the Army Reserves 1 month every year since I was born, or longer. "Oh, it's little Kika," he said, sternly, not happy to see me. "I know his father." I went to give him a handshake, as I always did, but he refused. He kept his hands behind his back, standing very erect, scowling at me. "Sit down," he yelled. I obeyed, sitting on a leather chair as two other men hovered above me. "Did Sinehead put you up to this?" Milosav used Dad's real first name. No, I stuttered. "We just thought it would be a cool game to see if we could sneak into the base." "Wait until I tell your father." I started crying. "Are you a Bosnian, Yugoslavian, or a Muslim?" his younger comrade barked at me. What was I? Was it a trick question? I was baffled how to answer. I thought I was all three. "I'm from Yugoslavia," I sniffled. "I'm a Bosnian, and my religion is Muslim." I was being honest, but judging from his scowl, I'd obviously flunked his test. "You can't be all of them," Milosav snapped. "What are you first?" I heard the echo of a Serb politician I'd seen on TV, who'd warned, "If Bosnians want independence from Yugoslavia, the Muslims will be extinguished." "I'm a Bosnian, Dini Muslim." "I see." He shook his head disdainfully. "Take him back to school," he ordered the younger guy. "What did you do?" My homeroom teacher, Milutin, snarled at me in class. I'd always been a good student. He used to tell me, I expect a lot from you because I respect your dad so much. I tried hard for him throughout grades 1 to 6. He'd never scolded me before. You're in trouble, you're in big trouble now, he warned. As Igor and I shuffled home together, I was embarrassed, my eyes to the ground. At least your dad isn't around to kick your ass like mine will, I told him, turning into our building's courtyard. I looked up to see my mother glaring down at me. Zadavichitoy, she shouted so everyone could hear. That meant, my hands will be around your throat. I'd never seen her this mad before. I took a breath, bolting upstairs to get it over with. I was at work. The radio news was on, she yelled. I heard your name mentioned as the leader of a Yugoslavian People's Army theft. I was on the radio? Geez, no wonder she was upset. I had humiliated her in public, smearing my family's good name. I was deeply ashamed. Now none of my dad's friends would shake my hand anymore. The owners of the candy store wouldn't trust me. They'd monitor my movements so closely I wouldn't rip them off like Igor. But Igor was the leader, not me, I tried to tell her. I took bandages and gas mask for us, in case anything happened, and I returned the stuff anyway. Go to your room, you are grounded, she fumed, swatting at me. I ducked and racing into the bedroom I shared with Eldon, who wasn't home yet. I'd never been grounded. I dreaded losing my freedom to play outside and having my nights ruined with the curfew. When my father returned from work, he marched in without knocking. I was sitting on the bed. He'd never hit me before, but I was sure this time I was in for it. He stood above me, hands on his hips. Why did you do this? He hollered. Everyone's saying war's coming, I told him. I took 4 gas masks, a shovel, a canteen, a flashlight, and bandages. I'm scared. I want us to be ready. He didn't speak for a second. Then his eyes changed from rage to worry. That's not your job, he finally said, quietly patting my head. Don't go out of your room or make any noise or your mother will kill you. I felt vindicated, but still nervous about Mom's wrath. Wow, that was wild. You were on the radio. How did you sneak in? Eldon asked when he came home, quite impressed with my newfound bad rep. Like Sylvester Stallone in Rambo 3 infiltrating the Russian base in the dark, I said. It was like that, but there were no German shepherds. I was not allowed to have dinner with my family, but hearing my mom's brother's voice down the hall, I called, Can I please see Uncle Ahmet? I hoped he'd protect me. No, you stay in your room, you thief, Mom screamed. Get out of here right now, Keenan. Ahmet overrode her. My mom's macho older sibling was always bossy. Knowing she wouldn't dare argue with him, I slunk into the kitchen where they were eating without me. Ahmet was in the middle of a plate of okra and rice. What did you do? He demanded. I stole from the Yugoslavian People's Army, I confessed, head down, afraid he might slap me. My classmate Alex told on us. You know who Alex's father is, Dad said. Head of the Serb Democratic Party. That's what you're punishing him for? You're not grounded anymore, Ahmet declared, magically granting me clemency. Let him steal from those bastards who attacked us with our own weapons. He lit a cigarette and gestured for Mom to make me food. She pushed a plate of okra at me, scowling, and said, Here, pig out, you animal. I downed it all fast, wondering if stealing from bastards still counted as bad. The next day at school, every period I was called to the principal. None of the other boys were. I missed all 5 classes. Why am I the only one here? I asked. Did your dad get you to do this? He kept pushing. No, I was mortified to think I'd gotten Dad in trouble. It was just a prank with friends. When they ordered my father to come get me, he barged into the principal's office where I was waiting.
Why do you keep interrogating my son? He yelled. He is not criminal.
The principal looked embarrassed.
It's just standard procedure. They keep asking if you talked me into it, I told Dad. At the base yesterday, your friend Milislav wanted to know if I was Yugoslavian, Bosnian, or Muslim.
What did you tell them? My father asked.
I said I'm from Yugoslavia, I am a Bosnian, and then a Muslim. Good for you, he said. Is that why he's the only kid here? Because he's Muslim?
My father peered at the principal. He was a Serb, so I figured it out.
Did you call him into your office? If you call him into your office one more time, you'll lose your job,
Dad threatened. Then we marched out. At our apartment, Dad grabbed his army beret, belt, and first-class captain uniform from the drawer. After his mandatory year-long army service at 18, he'd volunteered to stay in the reserves, leaving home for 1 month each year. Every spring, when it was over, I'd wait downstairs for him to return, looking spiffy and powerful in his tidy green shirt and pants tucked carefully into his boots. I'd run into his arms, he'd put his cap on my head and carry me home.
You're coming with me to the military base, he told me now.
At the gate, he announced,
Tell Milislav that Kika is here. Kika, we need to talk, Milislav said as he approached. This is not good for you. No, it is not good for you.
My father,
You asked my son if he is Muslim? How long have we been friends? How long have I volunteered to serve in this army?
My father ripped the red star from his beret and handed it to Milislav. Then he gave him the rest of his uniform.
I don't believe in this. I resign. I thought I could count on you, Milislav said. It's not my army anymore.
My father told him before we left. We used to look up to the Yugoslavian soldiers marching around the base. We'd wave and bring them candy.
Why didn't he ask Igor what religion he was? I asked Dad. Listen, that kid didn't call Milislav, he said. It was his father's dirty work.
At school that week, I was suddenly a dangerous celebrity. The guys wanted to know if we found any guns. The girls questioned how we managed to sneak by the armed soldiers. My teachers seemed fascinated that such a good, obedient kid had gone rotten, asking,
When did you become a robber? And how upset are your parents?
I relished my newfound bad boy status, yet I kept hearing Dad and Uncle Ahmet's words. If the army didn't like Muslims or attacked unarmed, innocent civilians, I debated whether that justified my misbehavior.
You're not going to need your braces anymore. I'll straighten those teeth for you,
Igor hissed at Alex the rat right before we jumped him on the school's soccer court. We got in trouble for that too when Milutin and told the principal, who phoned my father, but he never called me into his office again.
We beat up Alex for snitching, I admitted.
Good, my dad said. Weeks later, on the way back from karate one evening, late in November, I saw Eldon and Mom rushing shopping bags of supplies from our apartment to the main boulevard across the street. I followed. Parked there was an endless line of dented buses, kicked with muddy tires, their windows ruptured. Hundreds of Croatians crowded outside, battered and wounded. A dark-haired woman, cradling a baby, cried,
They took my husband away. Where is he?
An elderly man held gauze up to his bleeding forehead. A boy who'd taped his broken eyeglasses together helped an old woman in a torn coat bandage her hand. Was that her grandson? A blonde lady that looked my mother's age wailed, They murdered my son! He's dead! I'd never seen such misery up close before. Mom handed out cash and baby formula and medicine she'd bought, giving away our clothes and money.
Feeling grateful I still had my family, I rushed home to get the blue panda sweater that Grandma Emina had knitted for me for my birthday. I told Mom to give someone who needed it more than me. My best friend, Yasenko, brought his jacket to donate and a blanket too. Yasenko and I stood on the side together. I bet foreigners attacked the Croats. I think it was the Hungarian. Do? He asked. Or Germany, like in the Battle of the Bulge. I pictured the World War II movie about a secret, brutal German attack that we had on VHS tape. No, it was the Serbs, Eldon said, filling us in. They'd forced the Croats to flee their city of Vukovar, only 2 hours north of here. Croatia bordered Serbia on the east, but wrapped around Bosnia on all 3 other sides. The Serbs had thrown rocks and shot at the passing buses filled with fleeing refugees. It took 3 days to make a 2-hour trip since they were forced to drive through Serbia. No wonder they looked dirty, tired, and dazed. I hope our Bosniak leaders are prepared for when this happens to us, Eldon added. At that chilly, windswept junction, I knew we were next. I was different from my Serb classmates and neighbors. Yasenko and I were forever bonded by our Bosniak blood. That poor mother has lost everything. My own mother shook back and forth, looking stunned. Her baby is dead. More of our Muslim friends brought jackets and blankets and food. The survivors said the Yugoslav People's Army, now controlled by Serbs, had set fire to their homes in Croatia, burning everything they owned. All that remained was ash. But aren't soldiers just supposed to kill other soldiers? I asked Mom. You people will be next, a girl yelled out the bus window. Later, on Croatian TV, a refugee in Zagreb pointedly said, I want to thank Bosniaks and Croats in Brčko for coming to the aids of our people, not the Serbs. My parents were upset that no Serb citizens we knew helped. Instead, as we sat on the stairs, my pals laughed at the now homeless Croatians. Igor and the guys played war with styrofoam guns, imitating soldiers killing Croats. I wanted to be the Terminator, but Velibor and Dalibor insisted they were Serbian generals, and I was the enemy Bosnian soldier. I thought of the billboards contrasting the red-checkered Croats, green Bosniaks, and blue-striped Serbs. It seemed the whole neighborhood had been divided into 3 rival teams. That winter, Eldon told my parents he was stopped at a manned checkpoint on the way to karate practice in the neighboring town. Will we be okay? I asked. Are we going to wind up like those Croatians? Go to your room, Dad said. I walked away, stung. He'd never blown me off like that before. The trouble inched closer on Sunday, March 1st, 1992, when we heard on TV that Bosnia had declared independence from Yugoslavia and became a separate nation. While secretly cheering the bold statement, we were troubled by the reaction. Politicians were screaming at each other. Neighbors were threatening us. On October 5th, the Bosnian city of Bijeljina was attacked by Arkan's paramilitary units, who murdered unarmed Muslim civilians on the last day of the Islamic holy month of Ramadan in a city just 40 minutes from us. Arkan, the escaped convict who had incited the soccer riot, whom Eldon called a Serbian mafioso, was now a military leader. Our town was dangerously in the middle, sitting on a highway connecting west to east. Yasenko's parents sent him to stay with his aunt and uncle in Zagreb, where there were no signs of unrest. Standing outside after school that Monday, Dalibor came up to me. Did you hear what happened to those Muslims on that holiday? He smirked. They all died. Fuck their mothers, Igor added. They knew I was Muslim. Why would they say that about my mother? Or what, would they say that about my mother? I debated about whether to swear back, retaliate, fight, or walk away. I wound up ambling alone to the corner store by myself to buy myself a chocolate bar, kicking stones on the road. My friendships with Dalibor and Igor were over. I felt as if someone had pressed a button that turned the whole world lonelier, like everyone I thought I knew didn't know me anymore. One late April afternoon, as I was out playing, I spied my dad, meeting in the stairwell with all the other men from our building. One guy was drilling holes around the glass entry door to support protective metal bars. Hassan, my friend Huso's father, who lived downstairs, yelled that we ought to watch out for Serbs running the army. Our next-door neighbor, Obrin, shouted back, "We Serbs are peaceful people. It's the damn Croats we need to protect ourselves from." Hassan lunged at Obrin. I watched Dad step in to pull Hassan away, talking him down in the corner. Why was Dad defending Obrin against his own Muslim friend? Obrin and his red-headed wife, Petra, were never very nice to us, barely saying good day when they passed us in the hall. Hassan had already sent Huso out of the country for safety. "We'll be okay," my dad assured. But after school on Wednesday, April 29th, he came home from the bank, swearing and shaken. All of our accounts were depleted, thousands of dollars erased. All we had left was in our wallets, our life savings gone. "What happened to our money?" Mom paced, flipping out. "It just disappeared." "The Serb government is using it for supplies and weapons," Dad surmised. "How are we going to survive?" she cried. My father had been so popular and beloved throughout Birchcow. Now he never really believed anyone would hurt us. He didn't think we would have to leave until that day. Now it was too late. We had nowhere to escape to. "Tomorrow you and Eldon will go to Grandma's," Dad decided. "You'll be safer there." The next day, Eldon and I nervously walked half an hour to Grandma's, across the river, to the old part of town. After dinner, we watched TV with my cousin Amila. Then Eldon and I went to sleep, sharing the king-size bed in Grandma's extra room. We were shocked awake at 5 a.m. when 2 explosions shook her walls, flare-ups much louder than firecrackers we lit on New Year's. These were no warning shots. They were meant to kill. We flipped on the lights and ran to check Grandma. The ceiling had collapsed on the pull-out across from the bed. "My God, I was laying on that couch, but I changed my mind and switched to the bed in the middle of the night," she said. We walked outside to survey the damage. All her window frames were blown off, drooping over the sides, glass shards everywhere, as if a crane had demolished the side of her house. Neighbors came by to say the bridge connecting Bosnia to Croatia, just 300 yards from Grandma's, had been detonated. The news blared on the radio. "Come back right now," Dad stammered over the phone, realizing he'd made a mistake. We were safer in the middle of the city than across the town. "Don't walk by the Sava Bridge. Take a shortcut." Eldon took my hand and rushed us home. His legs were so long I could barely keep up with his strides as we passed shattered glass on the sidewalk from every cafe, clothing store, and bakery. People were sweeping, silently nailing boards over their lost windows. "Don't stop," my brother told me. "Walk faster." "What happened?" I asked him. Why didn't the stores burn from the bombs?" "The pressure from the sound waves must have smashed all the glass," he said. Why did you want us to take the back road?" I asked Dad when we got home. "I rushed to the bridge, and I saw it was severed in half," he told us. "On the pavement, I saw human limbs and blood. Half a baby was dangling from the thick branch of an old chestnut tree." His voice cracked, his face white as bone. He was speaking to me the way he spoke to Eldon and Mom, not like a kid. I somehow knew he would never talk to me like a kid again. Do we have to go to school on Monday? I asked Dad later. No, you don't have to go to school, he said. At first, it sounded like fun. I pictured a soccer game with Igor, Velibor, and Dalibor. Then I remembered that they hated me because I was Muslim. They weren't my friends anymore. You're not going to school for a long time, Dad said in a low tone that spooked me. From now on, the four of us are sticking together, Mom promised, hugging me close. You're never going anywhere without us again. On Friday, May 1st, 1992, rapid, continual gunfire and mortars announced the world's arrival in Brčko as the Serb soldiers and tanks rolled in. Our friend Mujo and his wife, Yasenko's parents, came to stay with us. Mujo was a handball coach who had an office at the Partizan Sports Hall and worked with Dad. How's Yasenko? I asked. He's safe in Zagreb where there's no fighting, Mujo said. Since the Serbs started the combat, I didn't get why they were battling out in our town instead of theirs in Serbia. When is he coming back? Not soon. I overheard Mujo asking Dad why he didn't send Eldon and me to Zagreb too, though we didn't know a soul there. Grandma called to say my cousins Amila and Mirza had packed their car to leave, barely missing the paramilitaries who were making their way up the hill. Should we go and hide in the country with Amila? I asked. No, we're staying here together, Dad said, his eyes jumpy, trying not to look unnerved. That Tuesday, as Mujo headed for his office at Partizan, he was stopped right outside our apartment by Obrin, our neighbor. Obrin now wore a green Serb uniform and was armed with an AK-47 and 2 grenades. Where are you going? He questioned. I can't sit indoors anymore, Mujo said. I have to check my office. I do too. My father put his shoes on, ready to go along. Don't be stupid. Don't go to Partizan. Don't go anywhere, Obrin ordered. When we passed her on the stairs, Obrin's wife, Petra, told my mom, Soon, Brčko will be rid of all the Croats and your people too. On Wednesday, Mujo insisted he was going to the sports complex anyway and coerced my father to come. But then he ran back into the house, heading for the bathroom. Mujo's sick with diarrhea, Dad said. We'll go to Partizan tomorrow. Yet on Thursday, Mujo heard Serbs gunning for him because he'd voted wrong. Everyone who'd picked the Muslim party was on a death list. Mom had been right about remaining neutral. With the help of a rich Serb connection, Mujo and his wife fled the country. Dad said Obrin was now a guard at Luka, the warehouse in Riverport. I didn't understand what Obrin was guarding there. The barrels of sugar and wheat? That morning, I went to brush my teeth, but no water poured from the faucet. Mom opened the refrigerator and the light was out. The lamp would not turn on. The stove did not spark. Check the bedroom, she called. I flicked the switch. Nothing. All the running water was turned off. The sunlight was flowing in from the windows, so we hadn't noticed all the electricity was gone. Don't open the fridge often or everything will spoil faster, Mom said. Obrin insisted all windows must be covered with shades from now on. If you are looking out the window, you'll have an RPG coming your way, he warned. From war movies, I knew that meant a rocket-propelled grenade. We spent the next 7 days on edge, holed up in our dim, dry apartment that seemed to grow smaller, darker, scarier. That Friday afternoon in my bedroom, 1 week into the war, I caught Mom covering her mouth as she peeped through the shade's narrow slits. I dropped to my hands and knees next to her, watching a truck filled with corpses pass under our third-floor apartment. Arms and legs hung off the back, looking like a crate full of broken dolls' limbs. Uniformed men in ski masks, armed like Rambo, marched down our streets. One pack stood by the park where we used to play soccer, only their eyes and mouths exposed. Oberyn said no man over 18 should go outside. All civilians were stopped by soldiers, demanding identification cards. Our Muslim names would get us killed. We tried to eat what was in our fridge. Everything else went bad. We finished the cookies and pita in the bin, and then rationed cans from the cabinet, carefully splitting sardines, chicken pate, beans, and vegetables. Soon we needed more food. Kika and Erden should stay inside. It's not safe, Oberyn said. Keeman should get supplies. It's too dangerous, Mom fretted. Oberyn said he'll be okay, Eldon argued. Run and buy us a loaf of bread. Dad gave me a few dinars. Be careful, Keenan. If the soldiers ask, give a false name, my brother warned. They're making Muslim men pull down their pants to see if they're circumcised. Croats and Serbs never had circumcisions as babies like we did, he explained. Muslim boys are dying this way. I tightened my laces. At 11, I was short and quick. Nobody my age had ID. I wouldn't give my name. If asked, I'd lie and give a non-Muslim name. I'd say I was Igor. If they told me to pull my pants down, I would run away fast. The streets were abandoned, except for army vans zooming around and the Serb soldiers who were now occupying our town. My stomach hurt from worry and hunger. The store beneath our building was closed. As I dashed across the boulevard to the closest open grocery, there were loud, ugly blasts of mortar and gunfire behind me. My legs went numb. I couldn't feel my feet touching the pavement. I hurtled over bushes and sidewalks, telling myself soldiers would never hurt a kid. But then I felt the warm breeze. Something grazed my left eyebrow. A whistling sound, and then a vibration against my eardrum made me dizzy. Must have been a random bullet. Was I hit? I touched the left side of my forehead. It was sore, a little bit of skin torn off, but there was no blood on my hand. I walked into the grocery store and snatched the last remaining loaf of bread. I approached the cashier, who knew my parents well. She always asked me about school. Tell your mom you Turks won't be needing to eat much longer, she hissed while grabbing my money. She added, You're not welcome here anymore. Now I was Turkish? I thought I was Bosniak. Neighbors and friends we lived close to our whole lives were abandoning us like rats scurrying from a shipwreck. On the way home, I sprinted back across the boulevard. That was when I spotted my teacher, Milutin, my most respected mentor, a tough grader who'd refereed our soccer games during recess. He was in uniform, holding a long gun. Hey, teacher, I yelled, relieved to see someone I trusted. I was about to blurt out that a bullet almost hit me, hoping to hide behind his back. Belie don't need bread, he spat, knocking it out of my hand. He leaned his rifle barrel against my head. I froze. My favorite teacher was about to kill me in the street like a dog. His AK-47 jammed. I jumped, tugged away, swept up the bread for my family, and sprinted home so fast I couldn't breathe. I turned back to catch Milutin's three-finger salute at me. Sure what it meant. He wanted me dead. Everything he'd ever taught me about brotherhood and unity was a lie. Passing a soldier with an Arkan tiger patch on his uniform, I feared Velibor was right. Arkan was coming to kill us too. Hoping they'd think I was a Serb and leave me alone, I gave the salute myself to fake them out. The bullet nicked my head, I told Mom when I got back, putting the bread on the counter proudly. I intentionally left out the part about Milutin for fear she would
If she knew, she'd never let me go out again.
Oh no!
She clasped her hands together, paced with tears in her eyes, then held the cloth to the nick on my brow, mumbling she was sorry for sending me to get us food. I understood the new law. Dad and Eldon, of fighting age, hid inside or they'd be captured, killed, or tortured. I was mobile, the man of the family now.
Hey, what's a balia?
I asked.
It's not important.
She pushed my hair out of my eyes.
It's a slur for Muslims. They want to wipe us out,
Dad said quietly. The next day, a year after my karate coach gave me a brown belt, Pierrot stepped out of the blue police van in front of our apartment complex. From the window, we watched as 12 soldiers followed Pierrot, their commander.
Oh, thank God it's Pierrot,
Mom said, eager.
I'll go talk to him.
I wanted to go too, but Dad put his arm out, stopping me at the door. My mother returned, looking startled.
He wouldn't look me in the eye,
she was crying.
He yelled, "Get back to your home!"
We saw Pierrot hand his men a list. A moment later, we heard the butt of a gun against our front door. Boom, boom, boom.
"Trevenchevich, you have 1 hour to leave,"
yelled a Serbian soldier standing right outside.
"Where do we go?"
Mom asked, her voice quivering.
"Leave or we will kill you. 1 hour,"
he shouted in her face, then stormed out. How dumb I was to think Milutin and Perro had ever loved me. Now they might shoot me and my entire family. My father was not the unofficial mayor in town anymore. He had 0 power. All Dad's connections and kindness no longer counted for anything. Mom covered her mouth with her hand. Then we went to the closet and pulled out pieces of luggage.
"We'll go to Great Aunt Fatima's. Pack quickly," she said.
In each suitcase, she threw in a photo album, saying,
"Clothes are replaceable."
I grabbed my favorite sports picture of me at Croatian hockey camp in the Adriatic seaside, which Eldon had taken 2 years earlier. To my left was my friend Miko, a Serb. On my right was my friend Mat, a Croat. I was the smallest one of the trio, the Bosniak in the middle, wearing an orange belt. I wrapped the photograph, along with my 1991 karate diploma and an undershirt, not knowing if I'd ever see my teammates again.
"Pierrot has eaten at our table."
Mom was panicked, barely keeping it together as she ran from room to room, scrambling to figure out which few possessions from our life we could fit into our suitcases in case we never came back. I packed my kimono and brown belt in my duffel bag.
"You won't need these."
Mom took them out, throwing my karate gear on the bed. I'll come back for them, I told myself, on the 7-minute walk to Fatima's, which we made breathlessly dodging past Serb soldiers with guns who were all of a sudden everywhere.
"We'll be okay,"
Dad kept saying. But then we learned that Luka, the riverport complex where I liked to play, had been turned into a concentration camp. So Muslim and Catholic prisoners were what Ovrin was guarding now, and Partisan Sports Hall became a slaughterhouse for Bosniak and Croat boys and men. On the wooden floor where I'd kicked and somersaulted, my people were being gunned down by Perro and his comrades, their bodies left on the ground in pools of blood. In the gym's bathroom, where I showered, Serbs were slashing necks and blowing heads apart. The dead were stored on the outdoor basketball courts where I shot hoops until frozen meat trucks came to take the rotting flesh away. If we'd gone to the gym as usual, we would have been murdered and loaded onto a truck. For the first time, I doubted Dad's word. Soon, we figured out the only reason we hadn't been killed already, because my father had stood up for Obrin at the meeting in our building, Our Serb neighbor warned Dad and Muyo away from the sports complex. It turned out diarrhea wasn't the worst problem you could have. Muyo's upset stomach rescued the rest of him. Now he and his wife were out of harm, somewhere else. But as all the Muslims we knew were disappearing from Birchkow, I was afraid there was nobody left to save us.